Welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hi, welcome to chapter of Turn the Page from the Syosset Public Library, our podcast. Today we have a very special guest with us. First of all, I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Evelyn Hershkowitz, Reader Services Librarian, and our special guest with us today is Caroline B.Cooney. Caroline has written 15 million, not written 15 million books. She has sold 15 million books. That would have been really an accomplishment, right? And how I know her is from the book The Face on the Milk Carton, which has sold 3 million and was also made into a movie. So we'd love to welcome Caroline B.Cooney to Turn the Page podcast. How are you, Caroline?
I'm super. Good to talk to you.
Good to talk to you too. So we're here today to talk about your newest book called Before She Was Helen, which is a thriller, a mystery, senior characters, which you don't find that often in a book. So why don't you just tell our listeners a little bit about the book, or a lot about the book, actually, because I don't want to give anything away. So I want you to talk about it. So I'm careful.
Well, I did write The Face on the Milk Carton, and this is a book in which a young teenage girl recognizes herself on a missing child poster, and she has to deal with the fact that she does not have the name or the family that she ought to have. But she didn't have any choices in this. She was forced into this by a kidnapper. I was fascinated by the idea of existing under a name and inside a life not your own. And later on, I wondered, what if you were an adult and you decided that you were going to discard your entire history, your family, your graduating class, every friend you have, and you're going to lead your life under another name in a different place? What would make you do that? That's a terrifying and heavy thing to decide to do. Have you done something absolutely awful and this is your only escape? Or did somebody else do something completely horrible? Or is it a combination of both? But you do this, you give up all of this. And furthermore, you pull off this other identity for 50 years. Nobody caught you, nobody even noticed. Now, I was writing young adult books when I came up with this idea, and my young adult readers couldn't care less what a 70-something spinster Latin teacher is doing. In fact, they'd probably say she's bound to be dead already. So I had to write this for grown-ups. And that was incredibly exciting. It had been many, many years since I wrote a book for grown-ups instead of for kids. And luckily, I was living in just the right setting, a place called Sun City, which is an over 55 active adult community, a term I never came across until I landed here. Now, the first thing you notice in Sun City is the unnerving similarity of housing. Literally, I could not find my own house for months when I was driving home, except by pressing the automatic garage door opener and seeing what went on. My 2-year-old grandson and I took a walk. We went one house away and he said, "Grandma, we're lost." And that's what it's like. I thought, it's spooky. I have to use this in a book. The next thing you notice is the remarkable friendliness of people. They moved there from all over the country with the express purpose of hanging out with new friends and doing new things. Nobody cares about your background. They might ask where you're from, but then they move on to important things like, can you be club secretary? Can you sub and pinochle? So not only is your house anonymous, so are your new friends. They might summarize an entire career by saying, "Oh, I was in marketing. Listen, are you trying out for the play?" And if they do ask about your background, you can say anything, can't you? You could add to it. You could delete parts of it. And who's to know? There are 4,000 residents here, and at least one of them is bound to have a shady background, and it might as well be you. So I sat down to write the book before she was Helen, which is some of the most fun that I have ever had. You ever showing it everywhere here? You can't miss the title now. Now, your name in Sun City and for the last 50 years is Helen, although actually you grew up as Clemmy. Now, like everyone in Sun City, you probably are a good neighbor. You probably have the key to at least 2 or 3 other houses because you're going to go in and water their plants and take care of their pets if they're away. And if someone lives alone and he or she is fragile, you probably have an arrangement to text them or phone them every day to make sure they're okay and didn't fall. So you have a daily text arranged by your very unpleasant neighbor, Dom. And amazingly today, Dom, who never goes anywhere or does anything, doesn't answer the text. You have a key to his house. You go over there, you're not happy about this. The last person you want to hang around with is Dom. But you do go in the house and there's no one there. And you make a mistake. You prowl around. Now you're a good person. This is not like you. You do not spy on people, but you can't resist it. And you end up taking a photograph on your cell phone of a very unusual glass object. Now, in the olden days, and I am definitely a part of the olden days, if you took a photograph, you developed it and stuck it in an album. But in the new days, you forward it on your phone to someone, in her case, of a younger generation. And she has forgotten that the minute she does that, that photograph is public property and can be forwarded endlessly. And so you send this picture on and you are cooked. It turns out that the object you photographed was stolen. And if something is stolen, somebody somewhere is going to notify the police. And you have left your fingerprints behind in Dom's house. But it is absolutely crucial that nobody should identify you. And you now have 2 people that you have to save. The girl you were before you were Helen and the woman that you are now. So I absolutely loved writing before she was Helen. I really am getting the biggest kick out of my new, in my 70s of all things, career.
We're so happy you decided to do it. It's a great mystery thriller. And it's so funny. My very first question to you was going to be, does Sun City actually exist?
I live here.
And yeah, I'm really glad to hear that it does exist. And all the things that you're talking about in the book.
They're there.
Yeah, I think that's great. And then the other question I had was how sending information online can have dangerous consequences. And you just explained that also. But you know, like in years past, you're right. When you took a picture, you first had to have it developed. Here, you send it out on the internet and you never know what's going to happen.
Exactly.
It's unbelievable.
Exactly.
So what was your inspiration for writing before she was Helen?
Well, it was living here. This is a wonderful place to live, but it's strange. This is a weird little subculture. And there isn't just one Sun City. There are actually quite a lot of them all across the country. And then there are tons of others that don't have that name, but that are similar. And a lot of us, as we become older, will pick this way of life because it's just so much fun. But it's also a little strange. I will say that if you've ever contemplated vanishing, get over the idea that you want to vanish in some little mountain village and just be one of, 50 people, and get over the idea that you want to disappear in some great big city. You want to come here because then you'll have tons of fun and belong to clubs like kayaking and wine tasting and foreign films and all that sort of stuff. And you'll look exactly like everyone else. So you'll have short gray hair and you'll blend in perfectly and have a great time.
Wow, good for you. That's wonderful. I'm glad that you're so happy living where you are. Where were you before?
I was in Connecticut. I was born there and spent most of my life there, but I have lived in the South before. So moving to South Carolina was very comfortable for me. I love the state and I'm happy to be here.
Good. That sounds wonderful. Now let's get back to talking a little bit more about this book. Are any of the characters in the book inspired by any of the people in your community?
No, and everyone here is reading it, which is a real kick, because when you write YA, unless you make a school visit, which I used to do a lot of, and they were a ton of fun, but if you write YA, you don't, as an adult, run into your readers. But here, no matter where I go, I'm going to meet somebody who is reading it, or their book club is, because book clubs are a huge, huge thing. And I've lost track of what question you asked me.
Are any of the characters based on people in your community?
No. All these people tell me that they're guessing, is this book character based on someone real? But the fact is, I think it's impossible to base a character anyone real. You've got to make it all up. For example, I have a dear friend named Donna. She wants me to name a character for her in the next book. Donna is a very chatty, friendly, above board, cheerful woman. But supposing I take her name and I want my fictional character to do something sly and underhanded and mean, I'm a little bit trapped, because the real Donna would never do that. So I don't want to use even names, let alone base a character on someone real. So if you read a book by me, everything is completely made up.
Yeah, and the names are not even people you know. You try to use completely different names. That's going to be hard in a community with 4,000 people.
I know. Well, but see, you have a directory, and so you come up with a last name and you type it in. There's no one there. You're good to go.
Okay. That's great. I'm glad to hear that. Now, I learned about the face on the milk carton when my niece was in 7th grade, and she had to read the book, and I grabbed it, I read it, and I just read the whole series. I haven't read the last one. I have to pick that one up, because that one came out much later, right? At least 25 years later.
Well, The Face on the Milk Carton was a standalone book. It was not intended to have a sequel. And in fact, it ended sort of up in the air, because I wanted my reader to go on worrying about Janie and about all of her parents, just the way in real life there would have been tremendous worry in this situation. And I used to, at that time, kids wrote actual letters. So I would get all these letters saying, that's not how you end a book. You didn't really tell us what happened. You've got to write a sequel. Well, I was never going to. But one day, a few years later, I actually knew what I wanted to write for a sequel. In Bible class, we had been reading King Solomon, and the famous story where he is faced with 2 mothers, each claiming 1 baby. And he says, just chop the kid in half and each of you can take half. And actually, a lot of my readers are caught in their parents' divorces, where it seems to me that the parents are willing to chop the kids in half and each parent take a half. Divorce can be so hard on kids. So this is not an unfamiliar story. But in Solomon, he finds out who the real mother is, because he says the real mother will say, no, you can't hurt my child, and she'll back off. And I thought, in the Face on the Milk Carton book, Janie has 2 sets of parents. The ones that back off will be the real parents. And that was the story for whatever happened to Janie. Mm-hmm. My readers were annoyed at that ending too. They said, you have to go on. We just need more detail. Now what are we going to write about? So in the end, mainly because readers asked for it, every 2 or 3 years, I would find that I had thought of another book, and I had taken Janie a little farther into the suspense of her extraordinary situation.
Now, when you were publishing those books, you were able to get out and talk to all the teens and the young adults and the children. What have you been doing now with this pandemic? How hard has it been for you to promote this book?
It's crummy. I think it's crummy for all of us. I mean, we want to be there in person. If I were able to be at your library and have an in-person meeting, one of the things I would do, since my character, Clemmy, is a Latin teacher, is I would say, show of hands, how many of us absolutely loved Latin? And there will always be somebody or many people in the audience who absolutely loved Latin. Well, I can't do that now. There is no show of hands. And, I loved my school visits and my library visits when I wrote YA, and they were just a great, great way to stay with kids and be among kids and enjoy kids. But none of us can be out there enjoying readers or enjoying authors from the other direction. And it's crummy. I think we have to admit that. So Zoom has its place. We're all working hard at learning it.
Yes, we
all
are.
these other things, but it's sure not the same. We'll be glad when we can go back to in-person things, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. And if you're still living here in Connecticut, it wouldn't be that far for you to drop in and see us. So
I know. I did a lot of visits on Long Island, although
Oh,
it's
you
a harder
did?
drive than you would think. You have to go into New York on I-95 and back out
Right.
into Long Island. And
unless you take the ferry and come across, but then you're driving. You were in Old Greenwich, correct?
I grew up in Old Greenwich, but at the time, later on, I lived in Westbrook. So the ferry is perfectly doable.
Oh, okay. So that was.
But I don't live there, so whatever.
Right. So we just have to do Zoom. We just have to continue doing Zoom with you, and I'm glad we were able to. So what type of books do you like to read when you're not involved in writing a book?
Well, I never read anything that has anything to do with what I'm writing. So right now, of course, with the pandemic, we're all reading even more than we usually did. I mean, I always read by the armload, but now I feel like I'm reading by the truckload because you can't get out there. So for quite a while, I read sweet, nice books of the kind that my mother read in the 30s and 40s, reissues of D.E. Stevenson and authors like that, which were wonderful. But then I tired of that, and I started reading very tough suspense novels by people like Lee Child, whom I had not read, so I binged on those. But then someone on my Facebook page wrote in and suggested that I read a book called Tiger by John Valen. So, okay, I get this book. In my whole life, I have never read nor considered reading a book like that. It's about Siberian tigers and the men who chase them, hunt them, are killed by them or photograph them or whatever. It was the most fascinating book ever, although totally weird. When did you last sit down and read about Khrushchev? And so now I'm on a Siberia kick. Now, if the libraries were open, the librarian would line up all these Siberia books for me, but you have to do it on the internet now. And so it's very hit and miss. And I've read probably 10 or 12 books set in Siberia, mainly nonfiction. If anyone out there has suspense novels set in Siberia, let me know, because I've found those hard to come by. But haven't you always gone on kicks like that where suddenly you're interested in something you never thought of before?
Right, of course. So the libraries there are not open, you're saying?
There is a library about 17 miles away, which is open.
Wow. So your local library is closed.
Correct. I can go to this one, and it's open in the sense that you can go in and get books, but they have removed all the tables and chairs. And I think maybe a lot of libraries have had to do that so that they don't have gathering of people, although I find that tragic. So I can go there, but it certainly is a lesser place to be when you consider that libraries will be one day again the absolute hub of the community, and that they can't do it now.
Right. Here at Syosset, we've scaled back. We are open, and
good.
Yes, it is good, and we do let people come in and sit, but it's only one person per table, and it's a lot less tables than we normally have. But we definitely we're open. Everybody listening, Syosset Library is open now. You can come in. I don't know when this is going to air, though, so that could change. But
let's hope so. Let's hope when you air it, people are saying, "What is she talking about?
Right.
What isolation?"
Right. Hopefully, when this airs, everything will be back to normal. We can only keep our fingers crossed. That's all we can hope and pray for. But in your community, are people getting together and gathering?
Well, Sun City itself, which has 2 clubhouses, they're not open, and it has a huge performing arts and a chorus. I used to play the piano to accompany the chorus, and none of that is happening. They can't figure out how to make that work. But I never played card games or mahjong until I lived here. In fact, I thought mahjong was a card game, but people have taught me. People have taught me how to play cards and mahjong. So luckily, I can still get together with friends.
Okay.
And do that. but it's, boy, it's not as good as having the real deal.
Yeah, my husband plays cards on Zoom with his friends. They don't even get together. They just do it on Zoom.
Oh, I'll
Yeah.
have to think about that.
Yeah, there's websites that do that. I don't even know how it works. He does it. I work Wednesday nights. He plays cards. It's a perfect thing. Works for both of us. That's for sure. So what are you reading right now? Is there a Siberian book you're reading?
Actually, I have stumbled on an author named Susan Conant, who writes mysteries about dogs and dog training.
Oh.
And I don't have dogs and I don't train them. In fact, I have it right here because I thought if she's late, I have to read a few more pages. So here's the one that I've got. So she's written a lot of books, so I'm going to binge on those. And I detest reading digitized books. I want to hold the book and have the pages. But like everyone, I've had to break down that rule. So
Right.
I do read a lot of books on my iPad. When the day comes that I can stop that, I will be ever so grateful. Don't you just like the paper of it and the heft?
I like both. I'm very easygoing when it comes to reading. I will read anything. As long as I can read the print, I'll read it. So I love the hardcover. I love the digital. I just find the digital amazing that you could just download a book in 2 seconds and start reading. You don't have to go. So I love the digital. But another thing I also love are audiobooks. Now your books have been out on audiobooks.
They have, and I've never listened to audio.
Oh, you're missing something great. You really should give it a...
Do you do it?
Always, constantly, every day.
And how do you set yourself up for that? Where do you?
I usually do it in the car.
Uh-huh.
I do it at night to fall asleep sometimes. Of course, then I have to go back. But I think audiobooks are great. There's some narrators that just bring the book to life even better than I can when I'm reading it. So I find audiobooks to be just fabulous. Okay. I highly recommend it.
All right, I'll try because I think we all need help falling asleep some nights with all the anxieties we've got going on. So I'll give that a whirl.
Yeah, no, it definitely works. But I just love, when you're driving in the car, I can concentrate on the book and the road. So knock wood, thank gosh, I can do that. So and there's some narrators out there that are just fabulous. So I highly recommend giving it a try.
I will.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So what's your idea of the perfect day?
The perfect day certainly starts with sunshine. I love sunlight. And then I usually take a long walk, 2 or 3 miles. Sun City has a lot of trails and sidewalks, so it's pretty much endless.
You're making me want to move there. I'm like ready.
Yeah, come. I think you're too young. We won't let you in yet.
I'm over 55. I can do it.
We'll come anytime.
Well, the only problem is I don't want to give up my job as a librarian here. So that's the only reason I'm not going anywhere. I love working here too much, but you make it sound like the greatest place to be.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And then after I've done my walking and everything, which is slowed down by saying hi to so many people,
right.
I like to write. And usually I've spent a lot of the previous day daydreaming and thinking about what I'm going to do the next day. So usually when I sit down to write, it's kind of a straight shot. I sort of know what I want to accomplish. So I might work for an hour or several hours and then quit for the rest of the day. But I'll still spend a lot of that day daydreaming and thinking, so I'll be ready for the next day. And then I have the pleasure of, well, not quite so often as I used to, pleasure of getting together with friends for cards or something. I used to be big in pottery. That was something I discovered here. Pottery is so much fun, but of course the studio is closed. So, it's a different life, but it's still a good, rich life because I love writing.
So we've interviewed a lot of authors. They write first thing in the morning. You take care of other business first and then you write.
Well, it is first thing in the morning, but I want to get my exercise in. I didn't do that in Connecticut, but South Carolina's hot.
Okay.
If you decide to go walking in the afternoon, you can't go out the front door. So give it up. You have to walk early while it's cool.
Okay. Okay. That sounds great. So what are you working on now?
I have gone to a book right at this moment that I started a long time ago and I fuss at now and then, which is a historical novel about the children on the Mayflower, who always fascinated me.
Is that an adult book or a children's book?
Adult.
Oh, wow.
It's pretty interesting. You know, a quarter of the Pilgrims were children. And so I'm working on that, but I haven't gotten too far. It's a different kind of voice that I have to have. But I do have another adult mystery coming out next year. It's not a sequel to this, and it's not set in Sun City. It's about a young man who makes glass pipes, which is to say drug paraphernalia. And he suddenly finds himself responsible for his 93-year-old grandmother who is in dementia care. And Freddie loves his grandma very much. Helen, in the book before she was Helen, she makes one or two big mistakes, but Freddie's whole life is a mistake. If there's a bad choice out there, Freddie's all over it. And this time he makes a series of mistakes which jeopardize this person he loves so much. This person who is really just the placeholder of his grandmother now. She's fading away, and she is completely and utterly dependent on this boy who is the least reliable person out there with the sketchiest friends. This is called The Grandmother Plot. It'll be out in the spring. And Freddie, who has no good people in his life at all except his grandma, has to figure out how to save her.
Sounds fascinating. Now, my question to you is, this is the second book with the glass pipe.
Yeah.
Where do you come to do that? Who do you know that makes these things?
My son. So here I am, Miss Priss, okay? But I don't have a middle class son. So it's been fascinating going to many studios over the years and watching this and gradually coming to terms with it and being extremely grateful that it's no longer illegal. And so or that is to say, the making of the pipes. And it is a fascinating art. It's weird and different and something I would normally never step into in my quiet little suburban go to the library again today life.
Right.
But I needed to work it into something. And I'm really proud of this book, which I sort of co-wrote with my son because I don't know the dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
He did.
I'd love to see a picture of the one that's in before she was Helen. Is there a real glass pipe that's in the book that you took it from, or is that made up?
That is fictional, but you can go online and look this stuff up and you will see some truly astounding pipes out there. You just won't even believe it. And the technique is something called lamp work or flame work. So it's not something that, say, Dale Chihuly does. It's something else entirely. And it uses a blowtorch. So it's dangerous, and you wouldn't want to confront anyone doing this. And it is fascinating.
Okay, well, everything you've said has been fascinating. So we hope that when your next book comes out in the spring, you'll come back and talk to us again.
I will do that.
Okay,
this is hello to Long Island.
Oh, great, thanks. So we're happy that we were able to speak with you. So I'm going to close this chapter of Turn the Page. This has been Evelyn, Reader Services Librarian, and we've been here with our guest speaker, Carolyn B.Cooney. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay,
bye.
We'll talk to you soon. Thank you. Look forward to your next book.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.